wish I knew. I'm sorry. I wish I knew you were going to be here. Oh, you're waiting. So anybody, just you, Jennifer.
I'm obsessed.
Did you first?
Yeah.
Okay, it's live. I wish I knew.
Hi everybody. Thank you for coming to our spring summer book preview. This is the first time we're back in person since
So anybody, just you, Jennifer.
so we are also watching
I'm
today
obsessed.
for the first time ever. So for those of you at home, please bear with us. We're trying our best here. So we will also be recording it and we will send that link out to everybody else tomorrow as well. So my name is Jennifer.
I wish I knew.
Of the Henrietta Library. Hi everybody. Thank you for coming to our spring summer book preview. This is the first time we're back in person since so we are also for the first time ever. So for those of you at home, please bear with us. We're trying our best here. So we will also be recording it and we will send that out to everybody else tomorrow as well. So my name is
I wish I knew.
Hi everybody. Thank you for coming to our spring summer book preview. This is the first time we're back in person. So we are for the first time ever. So for those of you at home, please bear with us. We're trying our best here. So we will also be recording it and we will send that to everybody else tomorrow as well. So my name is
I wish I knew.
Hi everybody. Thank you for coming to our spring summer book preview. This is the first time we're back in person. So we are for the first time ever. Quality is the new book by Emily Mandel. She is the author of Station 11, which was a very popular book that came out several years ago, and it's now a television series on HBO Max. So this is her new novel, and it's really hard to describe. I'm going to do my best. It's basically characters living centuries apart who all have the same brief, puzzling experience of either seeing or being in a dense forest and then suddenly hearing violin music in what sounds like a train terminal. So it happens 3 times in history, hundreds of years apart. Sometimes the people are on the moon, sometimes they're on Earth. And so in 2024, the Time Institute assigns a detective, Gaston Jacques Robert, and they send him on a trip through time to investigate how and why the glitch happened. Publishers Weekly says Mandel grounds her rich metaphysical speculation in small, beautifully observed human moments. It's by turns playful, tragic, and tender. This should not be missed. So, if you like something that's a little bit out there, this is probably a good choice. I will say that I loved Station 11. It was a really great book. The next thing I have is These Impossible Things by Salma El-Wardneh. I'm going to say all these names wrong, just saying. This is a novel about friendship and religion. It focuses on 3 best friends that have been together through their whole childhood, and they're navigating familial expectations for what is considered good Muslim women, while also trying to live their own lives and forge their own paths. Now they're at the end of university and they're about to graduate, so the balance is getting harder to maintain as they get older. They've always had each other to rely on, to cover for each other, but their friendships change, as friendships do as we get older, especially during this transition from university to young adulthood. And they move away from one another at the time that they really need each other's love and support. So this is about love, faith, family, tradition, and most of all, friendship. The next one is the second book by the Booker Prize Award winning author of Shuggie Bain, which came out, I believe, 2 years ago. And you'll probably, the title or the cover looked very similar to this one, so you might kind of recognize it. This is set in 1990s Glasgow, and it focuses on Mungo, who's 15 years old. He's the youngest of 3 Protestant siblings growing up in one of the city's poverty-stricken neighborhoods. His mom's an alcoholic and mostly absent. His sister is managing the household, and his brother is a constant threat. He is the leader of a pretty rough Protestant gang in Glasgow. It's an environment of toxic masculinity, sectarian violence, and alcohol. When Mungo falls in love with James, a Catholic neighbor, the risk of danger increases for them both. And then running counter to this, Mungo's mom and his brother have separate plans to make Mungo into a man, a real man. So the stories sort of overlap through the novel. Given the success of Shuggie Bain, there is a lot of anticipation for young Mungo. It has been called romantic, terrifying, brutal, tender, and in the end, sneakily hopeful. So, third is The Night of the Living Rez. This is a much anticipated debut collection from Morgan Talty, who is a citizen of the Penobscot Indian Nation. So the stories focus on a native community in Maine dealing with the complex inheritances of historical tragedy. They're about friendship, family, dysfunction, pain, but also joy and love. This book was named a most anticipated book of the year at Lit Hub. The next, The Change, is probably one of my favorites coming. I love this concept. It's by Kirsten Miller. She is a young adult author, but is making her adult debut. It's been called Big Little Lies meets The Witches of Eastwick. I'm here for this. Publishers Weekly described it best, so I'm just going to give you their summary. It's about 3 women who discover supernatural abilities during menopause, which they use to avenge murdered teenage girls in the New York beach town of Mattock. It's got everything. Magic, suspense, revenge, and sisterhood. If it's on your list, my hold is first, okay? And then finally, The Latecomer. I love a good character-driven family story saga. If you like Sally Rooney, this is probably your next book. It focuses on the wealthy and very unhappy Oppenheimer family, an unlikely couple. The parents, Salo and Joanne, marry. They struggle to start a family, and they're ultimately successful with IVF. They have triplets and then a frozen 4th embryo. The children feel absolutely no connection to one another, and they actively work throughout their lives to just distance themselves from each other and their family. As they're preparing to leave for college, their mom, who is desperate for connection, decides to have the 4th child, who is the latecomer. There's secrets, trauma, twists, lots of family dynamics. Kirkus Reviews calls it satisfyingly twisty tale rooted in complex characterizations. And Kirkus never says anything nice, so that's a big deal. All right, can you go to the next one? I'm not going to talk about each of these, but I do just want to show you there's some coming from your favorites: Ellen Hildebrand, Kristen Higgins, Emily Giffen, and then the ones over on that side of the slide are new authors or new to adult authors, like Nina LaCour. She used to write teen books, and now she's writing adult. I will tell you that book, Yerba Buena, is on a lot of lists. Most of these are family stories, sometimes told over generations, with a little bit of romance, but we'll talk about romance later. So, all right, you have to meet. So we have Taylor here, and she is going to talk about projects.
Okay. Alright, so first on my list is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So she does a lot of romance, and I'm not really like a romance person, but her stuff is very spicy, delicately spicy. So Book Lovers is, I feel like this is like a trope with her where like it's 2 people that have had like a relationship that isn't good, like whether they were like colleagues or like old friends, and then they get reconnected like later in life. So it's Nora Stevens. She's like a really popular literary agent, and she goes to this like beach town with her sister and reconnects with this guy who like I guess like got like the bigger book deal over her, and so there's like some contention with that, but they like reconnect, and I guess it's just like a saga in their romance. Love on the Brain, I'm actually really excited about. Allie Hazelwood, she did a debut of The Love Hypothesis, which came out last year, and it was incredibly good. Like, one of my top reads of the year. She focuses on, like, STEM, so, like, girls that are in, like, science and technology, that type of arena. So this is about two people in grad school, and they're both trying to get grants for like their projects, and they have to go against each other, and it's like kind of like an enemies to lovers thing, which I'm definitely like a sucker for. But that comes out soon, and I just think it's going to be good because Love Hypothesis was like one of the best books I read. Just like Mother, this caught my attention because it looks really creepy. But it's basically about two sisters who were raised in a cult, and then when they were younger, they split from the cult. I know, it's like Kathy's saying. They split from the cult, and they're like older, kind of like submerge like that life of theirs into like another thing. But the one girl comes to the other girl's like doorstep, and a lot of like their old memory starts getting like dredged up, and it's just like very terrifying. So that one seems good. And then Insomnia, I'm really excited for this one. So it's basically a girl whose mom had like a psychotic break when she was 40, and it starts by her having like bouts of insomnia, like going through a lot of like very strange things. And as her 40th birthday comes up, she starts getting insomnia and going through a lot of the same things her mom did. So she's now trying to figure out if it's like she's going crazy like her mom, or if it's just like a mental thing. So I like psychological thrillers. People said this was like a 5 out of 5. So I think I'm probably gonna divvy up, do Insomnia, and then do Love on the Brain after to try and kind of calm myself. So yeah, those are it.
Just to show you some of the other romance that is going to be coming out, we did through the end of August. So these are books that are coming out April 1st through the end of August. Catherine Center, a very popular author, has one. Husband Material is the sequel to Boyfriend Material, which was extremely popular. The Emma Project is one of those Jane Austen ones, which are always great fun. So just a few to look forward to.
All right. Just gonna make sure. All right. Hi guys, I'm Sarah. I am the nonfiction librarian here, or librarian to be. So I'm gonna talk about just a couple that I'm really excited about, and I'm also talking about a couple memoirs. I don't buy memoirs, but I do love to read them. So the first one, it had a pretty unique title. Did You Hear Mammy Died? And if you've ever watched the show Dairy Girls on Netflix, and if you haven't, you really should watch it. Yes, I know, it's my favorite. Yes, so when I read the description of this book, I was like, this is Dairy Girls in book form. It's about Seamus O'Reilly. He wrote this memoir about his life growing up as one of the 10 children to a single father in Northern Ireland at the end of the Troubles. He details how his family learned to take care of themselves and help their father out after their mother died when he was about 5 years old. He tells a lot of wild tales and hilarious adventures that he has had throughout his childhood, like when he worked as a guide in a leprechaun museum during the recession, and the time that he inadvertently found himself on ketamine while serving drinks to the President of Ireland. If that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will. So that comes out June 7th. Then I've got Simu Liu's memoir called We Were Dreamers, an immigrant superhero origin story, and that comes out May 3rd. If you, like me, are a fan of the Marvel movies and superheroes, you might recognize him from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Five Rings. He is Marvel's newest superhero actor. In this memoir, Liu talks about his struggles to forge a path for himself in the world. He was born in China and raised by his grandparents until his parents sent for him to live with them in Canada. He details his life with his parents' intense expectations for success and how he completely failed in his first career of accounting. Kind of like a wild opposite end of the spectrum. After he got laid off in his accounting job, he unexpectedly found himself in the world of show business and became a Marvel superstar. I really like how the book jacket describes his story. It's more than a celebrity memoir. It's a story about growing up between cultures, finding your family, and becoming the master of your own extraordinary circumstances. So then, I've got, the middle one is called The Lonely Stories. As an introvert myself, I really enjoy time alone. I enjoy reading books about introversion, such as Quiet by Susan Cain and Solitude by Michael Harris. So if you've liked either of those books, this one is another one for you. It's a collection of essays from writers that you've probably heard of, like Lev Grossman, Jhumpa Lahiri, and Anthony Dwyer. Some of the stories are heartbreaking, like Jessamine Ward's reckoning with the loss of her husband, but some are really witty and funny, like Lev Grossman's tale of heading into the woods alone. It explores loneliness and being alone in a way we've kind of never seen before, while also letting all readers know that they're not alone. So then I've got How the World Really Works, which comes out on May 10th, and that's by Vaclav Smil. I think the title of this book kind of speaks a lot about what you might expect to find inside. It's how the world really works. He explains some of the science about how we got to where we are now and where we're going in the world. There's some fascinating facts in here that Smil uses to tell the story of our present world. For example, did you know that every greenhouse-grown tomato requires the equivalent of 5 tablespoons of diesel oil for its production? Or that we still lack any commercially viable way of making things like steel, cement, or plastic on the scale required globally without fossil fuels? I always enjoy books like this that make me question everything I've ever learned about how the world really works. And the last one I've picked here is not nonfiction. It is, I also purchased for the graphic novels collection here, and I have a big soft spot in my heart for graphic novels. So I really love reading them, and also this past year a huge movie came out that you might have heard of called Dune, with everyone's favorite Timothée Chalamet. And the book it's based on is a huge sci-fi classic and even inspired George Lucas when he created Star Wars. The book is being adapted into a 3-part graphic novel series. Part 1 came out last year, and now finally Part 2 is hitting the shelves this summer. This part starts with Paul and his mother stranded in the desert of Arrakis after being betrayed by one of their own, and their family is destroyed by their greatest enemy. The cool part is that Frank Herbert, who's the son of the original author, Brian Herbert, he's the one doing the adapting, so we can trust that this adaptation is a pretty faithful one. If you haven't hopped on the Dune bandwagon yet, I promise you it is worth it. And we're going to pass it over to Jen again.
This is my last one, I promise. And then you won't hear from me again. I also purchased all of the mystery thriller. I am not a thriller reader, but I love thriller plots. They're just the best thing ever. So I picked a couple that sound super interesting and are getting some buzz. So the first is We Lie Here by Rachel Housel Hall, which comes out on July 12th. She's a best-selling author, so this is not her first book. She's published a few over the last couple of years. So if you read this one and you like it, there's other stuff to go back to. And they're all standalone. It's not a series. So this one is about a woman named Yara Gibson. She's on vacation, but it's not really vacation because she ends up back in hometown to host the 20th anniversary party of her parents. So she comes home early and she's getting ready for the party, and one day she receives a text from an estranged childhood friend of her mother's. She, and the text says, "I have information that will change your life." She decides to ignore the text, but She keeps receiving them. The woman's name is Felicia, and she keeps imploring Yara to please talk to her before it's too late. And you know what that means? Felicia ends up dead. Murdered. Yup. Yara receives a key to a lakeside cabin from the dead Felicia. Why does Felicia want her to know about the cabin? What's in the cabin? Secrets? About her mother? Is anything Yara has come to know about her life real? And is Yara in danger? I don't have the answers, but you will when you read this book this summer. The second one, The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, is coming out on August 16th, and this is another cult book for all you cult lovers out there. This one is about a woman named Shay who, while in college, sort of fell under the spell of a very charismatic man who was preaching his view of the world, which was that women should submit to men. Turns out that was a cult. Yep, she was in a cult. By senior year, Shay and her best friend Lauren have escaped the cult, but other people were not so lucky. Years later, Shay is a true crime podcast lover and hears about the death of her friend Lauren on the podcast. Apparently it was a horrifying death. So she enlists the help of the podcast host and returns to college town to find out how her friend died. And the deeper they dig, the more Shay realizes that leaving saved her, but left behind a dark and dangerous world for others. So that is The Last Housewife, and I love the cover. Last Call at the Nightingale is a mystery by Catherine Shellman. This is the first in a new series. She's written some other series as well. This is her second series. So this one is 1924 New York City. And it's Vivian Kelly, who is a young Irish dressmaker who escapes her dreary life at the Nightingale, which is a speakeasy where she can drink and dance the night away before returning to the toil of her life. One night, Vivian is going to the club and finds the dead body of a man in the alley behind the club. The owner of the club, Hux, tells her just ignore it, forget it ever happened. It was probably a bootlegger. No worries. A few nights later, police raid the Nightingale and they arrest Vivian in the raid. She has no money to bail herself out, but Hux comes to her rescue. He bails her out, but there are strings attached to the bail. And those strings drag her right into the mystery of the death of the man in the alley. So she becomes a sleuth. And she will go on to sleuth again in book 2. This one, the next one is by Adrienne McKinty. It's The Island, comes out on May 17th. This book sounds crazy. So Tom Baxter has 2 teenagers, and he has lost his wife, so they are grieving. He marries a new, younger woman, and as I'm sure you can tell, the kids are not too thrilled with stepmom. So Tom decides that a trip to Australia for the 4 of them is going to be a really great plan, and this is how they'll come to get together as a family. Well, the kids are not so keen on this idea. While there, Tom makes another brilliant choice and decides that it will be fun and totally normal to go to a private remote island to search for koalas. Yeah, a private remote island. Just making sure you heard that. Perhaps the island in the title. While there, a horrible accident leads to the death of a woman. Afraid of the creepy locals, they make yet one more bad decision, and this results in the family being separated from one another. And Heather, on the run with the 2 teens in the wilderness, with the very angry, creepy family of the dead woman in pursuit. This book should have been called A Series of Unfortunate Choices. Am I right? The last book is called Shutter by Ramona Emerson, and it comes out on August 2nd. This one is a thriller and has some supernatural elements, so it might have a little bit of horror in there too. Rita, I'm going to say these names wrong. Rita Todacini is a skilled photographer working for the Albuquerque police. She takes forensic photographs. Her photographs have assisted in the solving of many crimes. She's also able to communicate with the ghosts of crime victims. They lead her to clues to help their murders be solved. This gift is considered suspicious on the Navajo reservation where Rita has grown up. It actually forced her to leave the reservation, and it's harmed many of her relationships because she's haunted by the victims of unsolved crimes. One day, Rita is sent to photograph the scene of a supposed suicide, but when she arrives, the furious ghost insists that she was murdered and drags Rita on a mission of revenge that puts her in the way of a dangerous Albuquerque cartel. This is the first novel for Ramona Emerson, a Diné writer and filmmaker originally from Tahachi, New Mexico. So those are the ones I'm going to talk about. But I do want to let you know about these books that are probably some of your favorite authors. Lisa Jewell has a new one coming out. Ruth Ware has a book called The It Girl coming out on July 12th, which I think is ironic because she's kind of been the it girl of thrillers for quite a while. We got a new John Grisham, a second book in the Harlem Renaissance mystery series, Riley Sager, much anticipated, Another Island. Wonder what happens there. And then a new Michael Bennett thriller by James Patterson. So you can look for these. We are going to send you guys the slideshow tomorrow. So you'll have all of the titles. I should have told you that in the beginning. So yeah, those are the mystery thrillers coming out this spring and summer. Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm the one who actually purchases the historical fiction. I also purchase memoirs, and I purchase large print now. But I'm very thankful to my colleagues for having talked about some of the memoirs because there's so much good historical fiction coming out that it was an impossible task to speak about only 5. Well, the first one I wanted to talk about actually has been released. It is A Ballad of Love and Glory by Reina Grande, and it came out about 2 weeks ago, but the holds list is pretty small, so you can put a hold on it and we'll probably get it pretty quickly. But I had to talk about this one because Reina Grande, you may remember, she was the 2018 Rochester Reads author. So she was known for her memoir, The Distance Between Us, about coming to the U.S. from Mexico. And this one's a little bit different from her memoir. It's actually historical fiction, 1846 Mexican-American War. And if you don't remember learning about that, that is when, Texas declared independence from Mexico, and the U.S. annexed Texas. And Mexico was not thrilled about losing this territory. So it takes place along the disputed border of the Rio Grande River that flows between Mexico and the U.S. And there's two main characters who come from very different backgrounds. There's Jimena Salome, and she is a Mexican woman who has lost her husband and her home in the fighting. So she joins the Mexican army as a nurse. And then on the other side, you have John Riley, and he's an Irish immigrant who fled the famine in Ireland and came to America. He joined the U.S. Army, but midway through the war, he gets sickened by all the horrible things that are happening, especially by the U.S. troops. So he goes and he turns sides, swims across the Rio Grande, and joins the St. Patrick's Battalion of Irish in the Mexican army. Problem is, if he gets caught, he risks death as a traitor. He meets Jimena, and they fall for each other, despite the danger. And you wonder, can their love survive? And if you know anything about, what happened to Texas after that, you can see where that might be a bit tricky. So if you like historical fiction with a bit of romance, and a book that's described by the publisher as Long Petal of the Sea meets Cold Mountain, this might be the book for you. My second pick comes out June 7th, and it's A Woman of Light by Kaylee Fajardo-Onstein. And this is a full-length novel release from the author of the Sabrina and Karina, which was a book of short stories about indigenous Latina characters in the West, American West. And that was a hugely popular book. It was also very much honored as a National Book Award finalist. So this one is going to be a full-length novel release from that author. So, but it takes place in 1930s Denver. Luz Little Light Lopez is a laundress and tea leaf reader, and she gets left alone. Her parents are gone. She's with her brother Diego until he gets run out of town by a white mob due to some incident, spurred by racism. So Luz has vision. She's very gifted with, reading tea leaves and also seeing things. And the visions bring her to her indigenous homeland in the nearby Lost Territory, and she remembers her family stories, and she's almost like a keeper of these stories. She has to keep her family stories from disappearing and also survive on her own in this area. Taylor Jenkins Reid praises this book for being an intensely moving story and having lyrical, unpretentious prose. So if you love multi-generational family sagas, particularly those with indigenous Chicano characters, historical fiction, literary fiction, this is going to be a big literary fiction release, diverse Western set stories, and if you love Sabrina and Karina, pick this one up. My next pick comes out that same day, so that'll be a huge historical fiction publishing Tuesday, and it's by her own design, a novel of Anne Lowe, a fashion designer to the social register, by Piper Hughley. It's the first major release from this author who she's been independently published for historical romances, but this one is finally, she's making it big. So it portrays Anne Lowe, a real person who overcame the odds to become the designer of Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress. And it takes place in 1953 New York City. Anne has a dress shop, and a pipe breaks, ruining the dresses, including Jackie's wedding dress, which is going to be for the wedding of the year, if not the decade. And it's 1 week before the wedding. So Anne and her seamstresses must quickly and carefully recreate the dresses, especially that one. Lowe, she's used to adversity. She's the granddaughter of slaves, and she's overcome racism and economic challenges to become the dressmaker to the elite. So this book, when I saw it, reminded me a lot of like Jennifer Robson's The Gown, which was about the creation of Queen Elizabeth's wedding dress, and it also made me think of a lot of Jennifer Chiavarini's books, like the ones about the quilters and like Mrs. Lincoln's dressmaker. And what I thought is, it's historical fiction about real people, and it's always exciting when you get to see like the lesser known sort of women and, women overcoming the odds. And yeah, and the other thing too is it looks like maybe that one might have a little bit lighter tone. Obviously there's going to be some adversity that she must overcome, but a lighter tone than some of the heavier books coming out. The next one is for everyone who's a World War II fan, which I know is still hugely popular. It's A Librarian Spy by Madeline Martin. And Madeline Martin had the book The Last Bookshop in London. That was kind of her big release. This is her second one. And World War II is pretty big, in the book world, lots of releases every year, and certainly all those releases are very popular, as well as another trend is, there's been starting to be books about librarians and, of course, bookshops so why not combine? Why not combine the two? Like last year, there was the personal librarian. Okay, this centers around Ava, who's a librarian at Library of Congress. She has a pretty normal job until she's recruited by the U.S. military to work as a spy in Lisbon, but under the cover of being a librarian, and she accepts. There's also Elaine, who's a woman in occupied France. She's an apprentice at a printing press run by the resistance, and it's a job usually done by men. So the women, get connected through the coded messages that are sent and are in constant danger as the Nazis are trying to find them. Kelly Rimmer, one of the popular World War II authors, says readers will be on the edge of their seats with this book. And I also had to mention this one because it's at least one of 3 releases that are coming out in 2022 that are library staff in with either World War II or World War I. And the other 2 releases that there may be even more are The Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn that just came out on Tuesday about a library history student and library staff member in Kyiv. And then there's also The War Librarian by Addison Armstrong coming out August 9th. And then this release, that Librarian Spy, is coming out right middle of summer, July 26th. And then finally, the one that I think I'm most excited about all of these is called Mademoiselle Revolution by Zoe Sivak. And she's a debut author. It takes place in 1791 in Saint-Domingue, which is modern-day Haiti, and Sylvie de Rosier, biracial daughter of a rich planter and a slave. She flees the violence of the Haitian Revolution, and she comes to Paris. But what's going on in Paris is, she meets Maximilien Robespierre and his mistress Cornélie Duplay, and she falls in love with both of them. But if you know anything about French history, maybe you recognize the name Robespierre. They're having their own revolution there. At first, Sylvie's, impressed with the ideals of the revolution, the liberty, equality, and fraternity. And Robespierre tries to use her as sort of a model for, fleeing sort of her life in Haiti and coming to France. But if you know the French Revolution, it took a turn right around 1791-ish, and things start becoming bloodier with the Reign of Terror. So Sylvie must decide whether she's going to be complicit in the bloodshed or risking becoming victim to the guillotine. Yes. So one of the things that really struck me with the author is she likes to look at male figures in history through the women surrounding them, whose stories have been often lost to history. So if you enjoy, coming of age stories, women finding their strength, you'll enjoy this one. Reviewers have said that they love the historical details, the witty prose, and the character of Sylvie. And this is going to be guaranteed to be a fast-paced read with 2 revolutions. So enjoy.
Hello, my name is Kathy, and I am a Reader's Advisory Librarian, and I buy DVDs and everything that you download on the Libby app, so your audiobooks and ebooks, that's me. And I was told to pick out 5 books, and as you can see, I don't follow the rules, so there's 6 up here, because that's just how I roll. And so the first 2 books I'm actually going to talk about have already been released on the 29th, but I thought I'd mention them because now you don't have to wait. You can just get something right now. So the first book I'm talking about is Sicker in the Head, More Conversations About Life and Comedy by Judd Apatow. I don't know if anybody is familiar with who this gentleman is. There's one of the big first YouTube videos called The Landlord was written by him. It went viral. He started out in high school doing a radio show and interviewing big names in comedy. He was roommates with Adam Sandler. He wrote Freaks and Geeks, if you ever watched that show, and then the movie Knocked Up was also written by him. So he's got a lot of comedy chops. So this is a follow-up to his first book, Sick in the Head, and that was a New York Times bestseller, and now he sits down with comedy legends such as David Letterman, Whoopi Goldberg, Will Ferrell, and writers and performers such as John Mulaney, Bowen Yang, Amber Ruffin, Pete Davidson, Hannah Gadsby. And he just talks with them, and he has these intimate and really funny conversations and very honest discussions. They talk about what got them into comedy and what, despite their own personal traumas or the national traumas, like Pete Davidson's been on the news a lot if you follow comedians, but he talks about these things and how they keep going and push through all of them. And I thought I would give you a review written by Will Ferrell, who is interviewed in this book. His review is, oops, that's not it. Oh, of course, I can't find it now because that would be convenient. His review is Will Ferrell. Sicker in the Head, which I am in, is way better than Sick in the Head, which I was excluded from. This book is insightful, hilarious, and spot on. The last one was garbage. I don't care what the critics said, they were wrong. Will Ferrell. So, I'm a huge Will Ferrell fan. So I am 100% going to be reading this book. I just have to put my name on the wait list, I think, at this point. The next one was also just released. It's called The Worth of Water by Gary White and Matt Damon. He's my boyfriend. He just doesn't know it. I have always had Matt. Anyway, The Worth of Water, our story of chasing solutions to the world's greatest challenge. This is a totally serious topic. I'm taking a 180 here, but on any given morning, you might wake up and you shower with your water, you make coffee, you flush your toilet, you don't think anything about it. However, more than 750 million people can't do that because they have no access to clean water sources near their home. 1.7 billion people don't have access to a toilet. The water crisis affects a third of the people on the planet, keeps kids out of school, keeps women out of work, disease gets spread, and keeps people in this cycle of poverty because they can't work, they can't get their education. So The Worth of Water invites us to become part of the effort to end the global water crisis, to match hope that we have with the resources, to empower families and communities together to help solve this crisis throughout the world. And all of the proceeds from this book get donated to water.org, which is a very well-known charity. Thank you. I totally blanked on that word. A well-known charity that Matt Damon is the spokesman for. So, go Matt. But it's actually really worthwhile and actually kind of fascinating because we just take so much for granted, and this is not something we should take for granted. The next book, again, my books are always like, I read a lot of nonfiction and I pull from like all over the place. The next one is Burn the Page, a true story of torching doubts, blazing trails, and igniting change by Dana Garone. And one of the reasons I chose this book is the author is a St. Bonaventure University graduate. It's about an hour and a half south of here. I'm a Bonna alum, so we always stick together and support each other. But this book is about the first out transgender state legislator in American history, and it reflects on her unlikely rise to prominence. Again, she's a graduate of Bonaventure. She was a journalist, and in 2016, a political contact told Rome that she should run against Bob Marshall, the Republican who had years earlier said he proudly declared that he was Virginia's chief homophobe. And this is when Rome kind of had her eureka moment, and she went from seeing herself as an inadequate failure to a woman who could make a difference in the lives of others. She had somebody go through and completely dissect her background, acknowledged every mistake she's made. She, completely embraced her life. And with grace and humor, she owned up to all of her mistakes and wore her trans womanhood and quirkiness with pride. She also apparently was the lead singer of a metal band before this. So she just, that's who I am. She won, obviously, and this is a story of her self-acceptance and her determination. So I'm actually looking forward to this one. The memoir that I grabbed for this one is Viola Davis, because she's amazing. Both of these books are out April 26th, and Viola Davis's memoir is coming out on April 26th, and she is obviously known for her acting, and this is not a sugar-coated memoir. But you'll be able to gain true insight into her life, both on and off the screen. She takes us on a journey starting from her youth and all the way up to where she is now in her life. It's honest, it's raw, it tells the tale in a way that is inspiring, and they say it's very optimistic, and it's very relatable. So she's just a phenomenal actor, so I think I just want to read that just to hear about all of her experiences. But it's gotten great reviews, and I've seen it again on a lot of lists, like Jen has said. Yes, go ahead.
I just also want to mention that the cover of this book was designed by a Rochester resident who works for Harpavia Imprints and has made many, many beautiful book covers. He joined us last week to talk about the process, and this is one of the new ones that he's got coming out.
Which one, Burn the Page?
No, Finding Me by Viola Davis.
Oh, Finding Me. Oh, that's art? That's not an actual photo?
It's a photo.
Okay. Whoa. Okay, all right. I missed that one. The whole cover. Okay, the whole cover. Yeah, I'm learning. Okay. My next book is We Refuse to Forget, A True Story of Black Creeks, An American Identity and Power by Caleb Gale. And this is one, like Jen had said, she had one that's kind of hard to explain. This one's got a lot of history to it. Over 2 centuries ago, the Creek Nation, which is in the Midwest, both owned slaves and recognized black people as full citizens. A Black Creek citizen, Cow Tom, in 1865 became the chief of the Creeks, and he went to the U.S. government and got the U.S. government to recognize the Black Creeks as part of the Creek Nation. Well, fast forward into the 1970s, and the citizenship of all the Black Creeks was revoked by tribal leaders, even all the way back to Cow Tom, who was the one who got these rights brought to the people. So this book, We Refuse to Forget, looks at how did this happen? Was it the government involved? What are the Black Creeks doing to regain their citizenship? It looks at the racial and ethnic identities of people and how it affects them. And it's, according to Publishers Weekly, it is an eye-opening account that challenges our preconceptions of identity and shines a light on the long shadows of white supremacy and marginalization that continue to hamper progress for Black Americans. It's gotten great reviews. It's also not only from Publisher Weekly and Kirkus, but also from Jacqueline Woodson and Ibram Kendi, which are phenomenal authors, and anything they say is worth reading, I'm probably going to read because they're spot on. So it's a heavier read, definitely, but I think it's going to be kind of interesting. So I'm looking forward to that one, another one. Like I said, I read a lot of heavy nonfiction at times. And the last one, I am the True Crime Fanatic. I run the True Crime Book Club. If anybody wants to join, we meet once a month. The last one is True Crime. Rogues, True Stories of Grifters, Killers, Rebels, and Crooks by Patrick Radden Keefe. It's coming out in June. If you read The New Yorker, you may recognize this name. He writes a lot for The New Yorker. So for people on a true crime bend, this book from journalist Patrick Radden Keefe is a solid collection of 12 true stories about, just like the title says, grifters, killers, rebels, and crooks. Keefe explores intricacies of different crimes, such as forging a $150,000 vintage wine. I think the crime really is that wine costs $150,000. However, on top of that, now they're faking it. He examines whether a whistleblower who dared to expose money laundering at a Swiss bank is a hero or not. He spends time in Vietnam with Anthony Bourdain. I don't even know what the crime is there, but that sounds like a great time. It chronicles the
quest to bring down a cheerful international black market arms merchant, and profiles a passionate death penalty attorney who represents the worst of the worst, among other brave works of journalism. It's supposed to be actually quite fascinating. And like I said, I am a true crime fanatic. I try not to only read about serial killers and cults. I do try to branch out to other crimes. And so this is my attempt. But actually, this one I will read, especially because it'll be 12 different shorter stories. So that is mine, and I'm going back to Jen. I think, oh, nope, I'm going to round it out. Hey, enjoy your reading. We have lots of good books. If you are looking for recommendations, you can always ask any of the librarians, or there is a plan. You can email us and ask for book recommendations. We will be sending out, like we said before, slides of this presentation, and the recording is available. And I think I've covered everything else, except for a big thank you for coming out, because it was at different parts of the day nice out today, so we're glad you decided to come out here. And anything else that I'm forgetting? Hang on.
I just want to mention to those of you who are here in person, just leave that paper on the table if there are books that you do want us to place holds for you. If you're at home listening, just send us an email with the books you want us to put on hold with your library card number, and we are happy to do that for you.
I will be buying everything talked about tonight as an ebook and as an audiobook on Overdrive.
Yes, so if you're a Libby user, you will be able to find these titles. And as Kathy said, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is our first in-person adult program since March 2020. So
2020, yeah. 2020, yeah, I don't know. It's all blending together.
So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks. That went a lot faster than I anticipated.